Republic Digital is all set to drive the spotlight with its first ever
Industry, ladies and gentlemen, is the 5th largest in the world, continues to evolve with advancements in technology and changing consumer expectations, patterns. And this transformation is pushing the industry into a new era of innovation. And on the panel today, we are very, very excited to welcome some of the brightest minds, some fantastic people who are doing fantastic work in this industry, in the automotive sector, to discuss the key factors that are driving this transition and what the challenges and the opportunities are. So let me introduce our panelists today. I have Narayan Subramaniam, the co-founder and CEO of Ultraviolet Automotive. Thank you, Narayan. I have Puneet Agarwal. Puneet Agarwal is the head of Smart Mobility and Sustainable IoT GeoThings. Thank you, Puneet. I have Vikas Bardia, the founder and CEO of Chauffeur. I have Suhas Rajkumar, who's the founder of Simple Energy. I have Paras Shah, the co-founder and COO of Kazam. And I have Shitanshu Tyagi, co-founder of Emo Energy, joining us on our panel this evening. Now, where do I start? Ladies and gentlemen, when we were backstage and just discussing what we were going to bring to this round table, one of the key takeaways was that the industry, especially the EV, the electric vehicles industry, wasn't very kicked, if I can use the word, about the budget. Who wants to take that one? It's a very uncomfortable question. Who wants to take that one?
I mean, which aspects
Careful,
exactly do you
careful,
want
you
us
have a
to
new company.
get
Be
into
careful
detail?
about what you say, Narayan.
So any specific aspects that you would like us to...
Okay, let's start with subsidies, for example.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, at the outset, India has seen a very structured plan that has cascaded through starting 2019. So we are in the 5th year of the subsidy program. And I think it's done a tremendous job for accelerating the adoption. And as an EV manufacturer, I think adoption and technology need to go hand in hand. And if you ask me for our view on this, while it's rapidly increased adoption, companies like ourselves find that having a cap on a certain price band with regard to the vehicle segments we operate out of is something that we could relook at from the upcoming updates to the subsidy perspective.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because while mass adoption is important, and I believe India's got everything it takes to become a technology powerhouse in the EV spectrum in the next 5 years.
Yes.
And if we need to do that, we need companies that are focusing both on mass, on the infrastructure side, like my colleagues here, and of course on building cutting-edge technology. And it's going to be an even mix of all of this.
Yeah. Especially, I must say, Paras had some strong views on it, subsidy. You want to take that?
Yeah.
Paras?
So earlier in FAME 1 and FAME 2, we had EV subsidies on specifically focusing on four-wheeler segment, but the volumes are coming from two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and other category as well. There is a good change which has happened from the government side in FAME 3, where the allocation on the subsidy for all type of vehicle have increased. So super excited to see FAME 3 and very positive on that note. Yeah.
How soon do you expect that to happen, Suhas? FAME 3. I have some breaking news on that, but I'll...
I think it was expected tomorrow because I heard it 1 week back that, it was supposed to be, framed out first week of September.
Yeah.
But some sources say it'll take about a month or two. I hope it comes in fast, and I hope there are major changes, especially on how they're bracketing the ex-factory prices and ex-showroom prices. So that, quality products kind of get an opportunity to, sustain themselves, and rather than, building something offload and just trying to, put up out there. And I think R&D needs to be incentivized in India.
Okay.
In my opinion, FAME 3 should, kind of look at companies which are deeply focused on deep tech in terms of EV, of course, charging infra and other aspects. I think if that can be included in this, it will definitely boost the entire industry up. And apart from that, the demand is always there, increase the subsidy on the prices that are currently, been slashed, as you mentioned.
I see that two big players are very, very, I wouldn't say two, many of you here are very, very particular about the subsidy subject. Okay, let me
I'll just add one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's kind of even a bit more important now because we're in a high interest rate environment, right? So a bunch of people who were earlier, they not only got subsidies, they got cheaper financing to buy their vehicles. Right now, the cost of financing has increased in the past 2-3 years. That combined with, let's say, removal or reduction of subsidies is in general going to engender lower adoption. Because now, not only are they more expensive compared to what they were earlier, the cost of financing has also increased.
Yes. Okay. While we're on the subject of FAME 3, because I don't want to come back to the subject later, let me put this question to Shitanshu as well. Why is FAME 3 important for the industry?
In general, if you see countries that have done well, like Norway and China, subsidy and general government support has been a big part of it. And that is going to be the similar story in India. 5 years of FAME 1 and FAME 2 have helped. You've seen two-wheeler adoption go up. You've seen three-wheeler adoption go up. But the one thing that also is happening is the focus on consumer subsidies, I think, should go away, and it should be to companies itself. The companies that are doing well, that are actually establishing businesses, it's a lot easier to fund that than the complex process of FAME returns, claiming subsidies. There have been a lot of companies that have made a lot of misuse of that whole concept of FAME subsidy. So just to keep that a more streamlined approach, I feel supporting businesses in the first end, instead of supporting consumers at the last end, I think is a lot more fruitful for the industry in general. And there are PLI schemes, but then again, they have caps which make it very difficult for smaller companies or MSMEs to actually claim that.
Yeah. Okay. So Puneet, I won't ask you too much about the subsidy question. I know you come from a different, a vertical there, but what are the challenges as you see it in the electric vehicle segment?
I think it's a combination of things. One of the things which are here is the subsidy and adoption, the initial adoption curve, which I'm sure everybody is looking at, not only from consumer perspective, but also companies bringing out more. So it has to, I think it's a balance which has to maintain from both perspective, and it's very tough for government to decide which side to give when and how much to allocate to what, including the charging infrastructure as well. But challenge I see is this information specifically from infrastructure perspective, and not just charging infrastructure perspective, but energy infrastructure perspective and the EV perspective. All of that information it needs to be a connected intelligence is what we are looking at. Because the point is, how do you, figure out what the budget is? So by default, some of those things need to be put in there, that who needs to get those subsidies and who needs to get that information has to be not just qualitative or verbatim, but has to be quantitatively published to them as well. And that can only happen if that systems are available and some neutral party is cohesively collecting that information and can share back to not only to the government, but to the ecosystem itself. So I think that's my point in terms of till what time these policies are going to be, or these budgets and subsidies are going to be. And how do they keep justifying that, okay, these subsidies are given to right set of people at right point of time, actually. Okay. And that's very important.
Okay. You touched upon a subject of connected transport ecosystem. Now, these are real issues. I mean, subsidy is a real issue for all of you. And connected transport ecosystem is a real issue for all of you. It affects all of you. What has been done? What needs to be done? How serious is this issue, Narayan?
I think connected transport is an emerging field, and electric vehicles makes that a lot more accessible in terms of all the data, right? And if you break down all of that, the ramifications of the data that we have access to could have effects on planning out better infrastructure, could have effects on the consumer experience. Of course, it goes back all the way to your production planning, supply chain, and today we're living in a world where we have multiple AI tools, right? And I think what we've seen at Ultraviolet is we've been experimenting with how to use AI in efficient ways to optimize not just the consumer ownership experience. For example, each of our bikes are connected. So before an owner comes in for a service, the brand knows what needs to be done with the vehicle, right, on the front end. And on the back end, it helps us optimize, know our customers better, figure out our supply chain, optimize the supply chain. And of course, at some point, at a critical scale, which is the whole industry coming together, all of this is going to play a role in infrastructure development, improving road qualities, figuring out which parts of the country needs attention on what parts of, the physical connect between use cases from two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, all the way to long-haul transport systems. And of course, energy efficiency across each of these platforms is also going to be different. And the requirements on the grid, planning that out as you scale charging infra as well, comes into play here. And everything being connected is, I think, a golden opportunity for us to really build a sophisticated system.
What are the current challenges as they exist today about the connected transport ecosystem? For example, you have this logistical issue when the government puts money aside for charging stations. There are logistical issues on the ground. There are real-world problems that you guys face. Why don't you talk about it?
Correct. So, so I will take connected system in two parts. One of the thing what government and we as a company are solving, one of the major issue is there are certain sets of CPO which are charge point operator who are putting charging station at location X. And there are certain kind of vehicles which are running on location Y, right? So government has initiated a new process called UEI, Unified Energy Interface, where all the charging stations which are been installed pan-India will be coming to one single network. It is an intelligent platform where you will know all chargers from 3 kilowatt to 240 kilowatt range of chargers coming into one single platform, and it will be shown to all users. The user can be an OEM partner like Simple Energy, Ultraviolet. It can be a fleet partner like Blue Smart, or it can be any kind of e-commerce partner like Swiggy, Zomato. The whole objective of connected vehicle or connected ecosystem is to increase the utilization of the asset or utilization of the money which has been deployed in the market. So Kazam been one of the founding partner of UI, where we are democratizing the whole ecosystem, where all the chargers will be integrated into one single platform and it will be shown to all relevant players. This will really have a significant impact on the complete utilization of the platform.
Yeah. Well, okay, Suhas, what are some of the challenges that you face on the connectivity front?
See, first of all, if you look at the entire ecosystem, which is kind of turned smart, if you look at 6 years back or maybe a decade back, we really didn't have a concept called connected platform. We were purely about, building up and just analogs and doing things. Today, why connected platforms are important is because at Simple, we have about 30 lakh kilometers of customer-driven data. So our biggest feedback from the consumers, which are really smart people, that we don't have real-time access to certain aspects, and there is no quantification, as you mentioned, right? How much of charging is required, when do I charge, how do I charge, etc., etc. So we never had those aspects when we were beginning, right? And one more thing is, when you have a public information, which is clearly laid out of all the vehicles out there, in terms of, daily commutes, what's the peak, what's not, and how the charging is done, etc. And you have a real-time accessibility to all kinds of charging network around you, and which is AI-enabled, of course, as Narayan mentioned, that AI is the next big thing that automobiles are really looking at. But when you have this aspect coming in together, and we have a platform which is accessible just not by an OEM, but a customer also, and gets a real-time feedback, I think that makes everything easy for everyone across, because every company is kind of investing in data-driven aspects and also AI modules now. I think that investment can be put into better use if we have a connected aspects across the industry, just not OEM related. Okay. I think with Kazam also, as you mentioned, right, government is trying to bring in a unified platform which kind of helps in the charging infra. But I think on the contrary, but I think we should also look at how customers are consuming electricity on the electric vehicles, one, because that improves your grid infrastructure and gives government a data of what exactly is the consumption is going to be next 10 years or 50 years, and how can we improve our infra, because grid infrastructure, and how we can shift towards more eco-friendly ways of generating electricity. I think that is a very key part of India's goal of achieving net zero carbon emission. I think this will also be part of that connected platform, just not OEMs or things. I think it's a larger picture that we should look at.
Okay. Puneet, of course, you have a very, how do I put it, proactive government on the issue of EVs. Of course, there is much more that they can do. When such thoughts come in, and they're from the startup ecosystem, the guys who are young, the guys who are energetic, the guys who have so many ideas. I mean, all of you have fantastic ideas. But do you feel at a policy level that proactiveness is finding a reciprocation? Is there something more that the policymakers or the bureaucrats can perhaps do to help this industry?
I think, look, they are taking initiatives step by step, and those are in the right direction. Obviously, there's certain things more in terms of connected transportations can happen as well. And that can be part of the policies if they want, but I think the priorities right now are very different.
Yeah.
And hence, if you think the focus is much more on what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
These steps are there. Can it be proactively thought? Yes. From connected ecosystem perspective, the thought has to be based on primarily 3 I's. It is that everything has to be integrated, which is, you know, interconnected with each other.
Yeah.
When I say interconnected, that means your EVs, which is your electric vehicle, your EV infrastructure, which is primarily all charging infrastructure or battery infrastructure, and within EV batteries as well, that's one of the important component. And third is your energy infrastructure, which we just talked about. So all of them have to be interconnected. And then the second point is that they have to be interoperable. That is the second I actually, because we can't operate in silos for each other actually, right? So all of them have to be interoperable. The standards have to be from that perspective. One of the point which he shared about that how do we get that interoperability actually. And the third is intelligent. So if they are interconnected, if they are interoperable, the intelligence will come because the data is available on a common platform today, right? And that is something which Narayan and a few of the other gentlemen also said is, in EV, specifically in India, we can leapfrog this because nobody else has been able to do it. And we as Indians are known to leapfrog in certain segments.
Especially when it comes to data.
Yes. And we can be the first in the world probably to get this in the common platform for everybody actually. And that's what we primarily do is enable these 3 I's for anybody to come in and actually do that. And the common fabric for them is connectivity. You know, for any transportation ecosystem, right now we talk about physical connectivity, which is highways or roads. But what you need is a digital highway and digital roads for connecting specifically EVs. And that is what is needed. Because how these EVs perform in Kashmir versus Kanyakumari versus, you know, a very rainy season or a north where it's sweltering heat actually, you really need to have that information. And some of these OEMs will be much more present in that area, right? So how do we build that overall ecosystem and have that common platform with these 3 I's? I think that needs to be focused and brought in together in various forums. And who can bring all of these 3 parts, energy, infrastructure, EVs or automotive, these segments, all from government perspective also have to be brought on one platform or one forum who can talk about these, all of that. Because this is what's going to build this ecosystem together. It's not one or the other. I think it's all have to come together to give this.
It's a fantastic thought. I mean, you made a point, you know, earlier when we were speaking. You said, and I'm putting this question to you, Shitanshu. You said there are more vehicles in India than homes.
Oh, absolutely.
There are more vehicles in India than homes.
Absolutely.
And if we could track as a country and give the world an example of during COVID, the manner in which we rolled out vaccines, and it was all primarily got to do with data. If we can have your RFIDs on every vehicle, right? At toll plazas, there's no reason why all vehicles in India can be connected, right? Shitanshu, it's a great idea, but is it possible?
Absolutely. I think the technology is there. There's a lot of companies that are working on this. The intent, though, to actually standardize and make something interoperable, for example, is very difficult in this segment. There's a lot of different hardware players. There's a lot of different software players. And if you take UPI, for example, and so a lot of people mentioned about UEI, to implement UEI versus UPI, the level of difficulty is immense because there's so many companies you need to standardize chargers, batteries, IoT devices. All of these to come on one platform, I think the government really can't just be recommending, it really has to mandate, and mandate to the point where everybody has to do it or you're kind of out. That becomes extremely difficult in an industry which is still evolving. There's a lot of us who are still developing more advanced ways of doing things. So there is a catch-up game here involved, but I do believe that there is the intent at least to have some data being tracked on every vehicle. So we as a battery company, for example, track a lot of battery data, which we believe in the future is going to be very critical for used vehicle financing, used vehicle insurance, even just how do you know whether the battery is degraded first or the vehicle is degraded first. These are a lot of issues which I think the government is trying to address, a lot of private companies are trying to address. I believe in the next 5 years there will be a lot more movement on this, but a hardware-driven industry for a country like India where there's so many parties involved is very difficult. And
okay. I'm bringing it down to some questions on the minds of the common man, right? For example, and media is partly to blame for this. I mean, I'm not saying Republic, but I'm saying generally media is, you know, when you speak of EVs, right? The first thing that people tell you, "Arey yaar, battery, you know, charging, there's not enough charging stations." They say, "I heard batteries explode," right? Right? Like, how do you address these concerns to a market that you want to evolve, that you want to grow? You want to take that question? You can.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we run a fleet of 100 EV cars, and I think the challenge is real because before we started this business, spoke to a bunch of drivers, spoke to a bunch of EV users, and people have all kinds of anxieties and doubts around a new piece of technology. I think if we took about 15, 12 years, if we rewinded 15 years, the switch from smartphone, the switch to smartphone rather from like, you know, Blackberries or the keypad-oriented phones also probably kind of faced a very similar trajectory where people were just like, but what if it stops working? You know, what if I can't press the screen? What if it just hangs? But it took like an iPhone, which was of a very superior form factor, to kind of then start showing people what that life could be. I think in this space also, because there's a lot of anxiety and, you know, for most people in India, purchasing a home is like their biggest investment.
Yes.
Purchasing a vehicle is their second biggest investment, right? So you kind of can't blame them for being very anxious about whether or not they are making the right choice. Some of it is real, some of it is very psychological, right? Like you could say that, okay, range is 100 kilometers. Now, 95% of that time, that person is probably not going to cross that threshold. So that's like an illogical fear to have. But for that 5% or that 2% of the case where they might be in a position to cross that, that is what they will base their decision on, or very likely to base their decision on. It's just human.
Yeah.
So there, I think, you know.
But has the industry come a long way from there?
It definitely has, right? All of these things help, right? The kind of new vehicles that a bunch of these folks here are introducing, they have higher ranges. That's a function of better battery packs, better technology being put in. A lot of the charging infrastructure has come up, which again reduces the anxiety. And it's not only the infrastructure is now available, it's also the fact that there's more power. So like, you know, what you could do earlier, what would have taken 1 hour, probably will take a lot less today. So those things have definitely helped the entire kind of industry as well as the users move in the direction of more adoption.
Yeah. I think it's got to do a lot with awareness also.
Yeah. Of course.
I think awareness is everything. I'll confess, I didn't know too much about the EV industry and the kind of advancement in EV bikes and technology, right? Until just before we came in, we had a very friendly banter when I said I travel 150 kilometers in Noida. Suhas immediately said, I have a range of 220, man. And Narayan here, what's your range, Narayan?
320.
320. Fantastic.
Yeah, close.
Good stuff. But on the safety aspect, the industry's come a long way, right? I mean,
For sure.
from then.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. So I think what you just said is very relevant. The transition that's happened from one way of life to another often is met with resistance from those of us who are used to that previous way, right? So while the mobile phone industry definitely saw that happen, we're seeing that in the vehicle industry as well.
Yeah.
And to get a little more technical on this topic, see, cell chemistries have evolved rapidly from pouch cells to today we're working with multiple formats, cylindrical cells that are widely used now in the automotive industry. And at a cell level, the chemistry is quite stable. You have LFPs, NMCs with different energy density between them. And all of these cells are tested for, you know, most often north of 100 degrees as well, right? And it's often the separator material between the anode and the cathode that gets compromised. And what could avoid any such instances that we've seen from certain companies in the last, say, 3 to 5 years is good quality manufacturing at scale.
Yeah.
You know, making a battery pack that is robust at a prototype level is often easy because you put a lot of attention, energy into it. But scaling that once you get to hundreds and thousands, the manufacturing process, the line, that is where I think if enough attention is given from a thermal perspective. So, for instance, there's multiple levels of safety on battery packs. electrical, electronic, software, thermal, mechanical. And we as a company have taken safety very, very close to heart, right? And as much R&D effort has gone into the battery tech as the rest of the vehicle. In fact, we're running our 7th generation of batteries, which is the fixed format batteries on the F77. Our foray started with making batteries safe from a modular battery perspective, but today we migrated to a fixed format.
Yeah.
And when you engineer each of these and test each of these, for example, a mechanism like a cell level fuse, right? For us, we couldn't use a commodity fuse structure. We had to develop our own fuse and making sure that fuse blows at a certain threshold across materials that you're sourcing from different parts of the country. Needs physical testing, and that takes a good 8-10 months in some cases, and you cannot bypass that. So my view on this is, we've got everything it takes as a collective knowledge base in the country. But I would say to the whole EV industry at large, let's take a little more time to make sure the product and the engineering is robust before putting it out there in the roads. And we're still at such a nascent phase in the market. Whether you're hitting the market in 2024, 2025 is not going to make such a big difference in the grander scheme of things. And in fact, the more people that take it responsibly, the stronger the industry is going to get.
Also,
go ahead.
Yeah, just to add, you spoke about safety being a concern and battery will blow up and things like that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying generally.
Generally, okay. I think that is a thing of the past, I think I'll come to a few points of Narayan also, right? Because I can correlate to him because Simple has spent 5 years just on the battery packs, more or less on that. But I think media can educate the consumer on the quality of the products that companies are bringing in, right? We have never had a roundtable on the guys who really qualify the battery standards, which was laid out in 2022 by the Government of India. Let's give some credit to Government of India after the fire incidents happened in March 2022, and they came up with regulations. Brilliant, thing. Of course, that kind of impacted a lot of timelines, but I think media can play a big role, getting stakeholders which are serious about it. I think media should do an independent audit, go to factories, go to R&Ds, see what those companies are doing, bring them on the table, educate the consumer. This is where you should be looking at your products coming from, not from XYZ of other countries and of course, a few things here. And as Narayan mentioned, it's just not about certain chemistry or anything. It's just purely how you kind of pack it together, how you implement, and how do you get the quality in, right? For example, at Simple, we developed our own PCM with IIT Indore. We collaborated with the institution of India itself, right? India has immense talent, and we can solve battery technology in mere of very small time with the right efforts and right attention. I think we don't have to really worry about battery as a problem today. It is just it's just misconception. Because of few examples in the past. But I think today we are more advanced, and I think it's just right education. I think media can play a big role in this. And of course, government is pushing in from their end, and I think they're doing a fantastic job, in my opinion.
I was going through some of the numbers, of the sales of four-wheelers, EVs versus two-wheelers and three-wheelers. The numbers are huge. Correct. And I think the mindset also is changing somewhere, right? So this is a larger question to all of you. You can take it, Puneet. We have the technology. You look at the folks here. Everyone must be in their 20s or 30s max, I'm guessing. 30s, right?
20, 28.
Okay. 30s. Okay, 20s and 30s, right? It's fantastic talent in India. You have 20 and 30-year-olds launching brands and, fantastic products, and, they've got the market share with them. And we have the technology, we have the talent, we have the willpower, we have the energy. What more do we need to become a world-class automotive industry? For example, he just told me that, Ultraviolet has been certified to now sell in Europe. And I'm sure that many more EV makers in India can go out and do that, and we will be exporting, right? We all also do that in the normal vehicles. The two-wheelers do it, but in the EV segment, that's a big deal, right? To adopt to those standards and then qualify, right? My question to you is, what are the opportunities? What are the challenges? How can we leverage technology and the people we have, the talent we have to become a world-class automotive industry?
Look, I think a lot of good work which is happening, and I think we were talking about this, it's is the overall consumer experience.
Yeah.
And I link it from the safety aspect of it, actually, right? And I'll abstract it from EV parts specifically. We as India contribute 1% of vehicle population, actually. So number of vehicles all across the world, we more than 1% actually, which is there.
Yeah.
The number of fatalities in India is more than 10%.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Is that contribution because of vehicle safety? No. Right? It's the driving patterns, it's the driving behavior, it's the infrastructure which is there. So if you really ask me if we can make vehicles which can work here and are safer enough, that can work in any country, actually, to be honest. So
Yes.
I think some of the gentlemen who is sitting here, who's in this manufacturing space, if they can manufacture here and get it working here, it will leapfrog and we can go out and be one of the best exports, actually. So one is obviously technology plays paramount. He was just saying 6-7 months of testing which needs to be done. I think apart from time frame, it's also the varied data set at different places, at different time, different configurations, etc. All of those things are considered. That's the time-consuming process.
Yeah.
If that can be reduced, can he do a lot more faster? Obviously, he could, actually. And that's where the technology would come into picture. That's where the, a lot of that data ingestion, if he can get per second data on all of these information, what's happening based on the road infrastructure, based on driving patterns, because battery cell chemistry is all common, actually. Right? But somebody is driving in a certain pattern, somebody is driving in different pattern, in different roads, the behavior is going to be different. So if that information access to him is available, any one of them, they can make a faster design, faster changes in the technology without recall of these things.
Yeah.
Over-the-air upgrades can happen because most of these are now software-defined systems, actually.
Yeah.
But mechanical systems have been there for quite some time. Interlinkage has been time, but I assume most of it is now getting as software-based, which can be upgraded online, actually. So I think a lot of those things are happening both from technology perspective. We're also leapfrogging some of the designs which you see of coming out of our two-wheeler, three-wheelers, as well as now passenger vehicles as well. These amazing designs. These are like world-class designs which are there, which nobody is doing, and that too at such an affordability.
Yeah.
Initially, if you go back, some time back, design was always considered to be premium.
Correct.
Right? And we were talking from chauffeur perspective also, they give a premium experience and a premium service, but an affordable price. Because that's how we are, right? And if I can do that and take it outside, who wouldn't want to take it, right?
Yeah.
They would want to take it, actually.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a combination of that technology, experience, design, and the faster churning out these things, which we can take outside. And I think we will be, anyways, we are third largest automotive, economy in the country, actually, anyways.
And because you touched on a very important point, I'm just sort of deviating a little bit here because it's very important. I'll put this question to you, Shitanshu. In the newsroom, right? I don't know, it doesn't happen when you're in a national media, when you're sitting in Delhi or Mumbai, and when you're doing the national picture. But in the regional media, in the local media, right? Every day there are at least 10 to 15 horrific videos of accidents that come in, and it's horrible. I mean, it's painful, right? Yesterday, there was an accident in Raichur, in Karnataka, where a school bus carrying students was involved in this massive accident, and many students lost their limbs. 2 of them lost their lives. Very disturbing images. On the issue of reducing accidents and safety, right? Where are we at? What can we do?
Right, I think there's a lot of things we need to do right? Like all the way starting from how we lay out policies around this. A lot of people have talked about infrastructure improving. Vehicle safety standards itself, if you take us globally, we're still far behind, let's say, some of the US or some of the Europe standards. There's a lot of push for more airbags for passenger vehicles, but you'll notice that in buses, there's nothing. Buses are just a steel shell with seats protecting people. So the vehicles that actually matter, we've obviously done a lot lesser work than what is expected. So there's multiple layers to solve this. I think there is a lot of companies at every level trying to solve this, but from the government side, again, a push to really mandate like buses with a certain level of safety, cars with a certain level of airbags, people really being pushed to put seatbelts on all the time, because that's an 80% risk mitigation itself.
Yeah.
We as a country just hate seatbelts in general. Like even cars, we put it behind our backs, we try to just plug them in, and we're probably one of the few countries that are actually so against it. Like backseat drivers in cars probably never even use seat belts. So mandating some of that, having electronic systems that study your data from across from safety levels, using that to improve.
Yeah.
At every stage, we need to just be way more serious about safety. I think this comes as a consumer mindset. This comes as a vehicle companies pushing this down your throat, and just the government really mandating this as seriously as they can, because we as a country in general take this a little bit lightly as a topic and don't want to spend even ₹1 extra just for safety aspect. And it's a hard problem to solve with so many people always having that mindset, but yeah, just always talking about it, always keeping it at the forefront, always just keeping that as the first priority in design, in implementation. That's all I think we can do as manufacturers.
Yeah, design is one, but on the implementation part, are there serious issues? I mean, because you look at the age of, for example, buses in the rural areas and the quality of these vehicles, and you spoke about drivers and behavioral patterns. So how do you solve this problem?
I think with the new EV connected vehicle system coming into place, for example, say one of the things what all EV manufacturers are doing, if the vehicle is running at a specific, like I was taking a chauffeur, I was taking an EV cab, where if the driver is driving at a speed above 65 or 70, right, the system automatically triggers it and tells the driver not to drive above 65. So what I'm seeing as a transition from a mechanical ICE engine vehicle to EV, because of the connected system, a driver can be given notification, a push notification or even an IVR call, where if the pattern is breaking, for example, if he's driving rashly, if the driver is driving the vehicle rashly, it can be solved at an immediate basis. The notification can be gone immediately, and then of course, if we go into the BMS system, they can even lower the power of the battery or even the motor, and the vehicle can be even stopped. So by using the connected vehicle system, we can definitely reduce the vehicle fatality rate.
I think we can just solve it by two things, right? Now let's just not ignore the fact that ADAS is very advanced, right? All the passenger vehicles, government can just come with a policy. You need to have this emergency braking and ADAS system at level 2 or level 3, whatever government feels right in safety standards, and incentivize those aspects to OEMs directly. Say your vehicle cost will not go up, might go up by 5%, 10%, but whatever goes up, government will support just for the commercial vehicles or the vehicles where kids are going or it is used for that, and permits of these vehicles need to be strictly audited. Every single traffic police guys are equipped enough. Now we are, putting challan for 130 kmph. I think this is easily trackable. I think we are living in an AI world. Let's not be ignorant to the fact that there is technology available. Implementation has to come from private and public sectors, and I think we can definitely put that forward. And I'm sure government is going to look at it. And if I get a stage wherever I can speak about it, I think I will push for ADAS and automation in the passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles, because just not kids, but I think a lot of truck drivers meet with accidents. I've seen every time I go on highway, I'll see 1 or 2 trucks, off the road, and there are a lot of issues there. I think if we can subsidize those safety aspects so that vehicle prices don't go up, because these are gig workers and they cannot afford expensive techs and at scale we can reduce costs. But I think government can take a big initiative here and apply level 3s or level 2s, if not beyond that. I think Europeans are easy to come in here and they can share the tech. I don't think that.
You want to say something, Priya?
So I'm just want to add, look, what his point is very valid, actually. Look, government has taken certain initiative. For example, they mandated certain things for hazardous carrying material, actually. And we closely work on this for retrofitted specifically. Look, there are only 2 to 3 points here. One is compliance. Government has already have a lot of safety standards and how people need to drive, but there's a compliance issue. Now, compliance is a behavioral pattern of an individual.
Yes.
Plus, how can you monitor it? So, either putting cameras on a traffic light or traffic police monitoring it manually. But putting this ADAS retrofitted, we're already working with a lot of logistics companies where we're putting this retrofitted. Another problem is overusing of drivers. Look, we all talked about utilization of assets. Asset utilization is not a problem, but utilization of a human being as a driver, that we have to channelize. Look, he also needs to stop after every 4 hours, 5 hours, need to stretch, etc. So I think it is a compliance and the education which has happened. And compliance, one of the points he mentioned, we're working with these logistics companies, putting these cameras and having this voice system in the trucks and vehicles where we identify whether he's wearing a belt, whether he's drowsy, whether he's sleepy, so that we can prompt him, oh, why don't you stop on the side, take a rest, and do. And also their driving pattern based on these, tracking systems which are there, whether he's harsh braking, and penalize the driver, or not just penalize, but educate him later on. Look, you've reached to a level 1 or level 2 or level 3 in driving patterns actually. So that their utilization, their safety is also considered. It is both ways that, it's the driver also who has to earn the money, so he will go 12 hours, 20 hours, straightforward, right? But if you really want to increase the safety, it is not just putting tech, because you have to then go back and say, this driver has driven for 4 hours, he got to stop for half an hour, otherwise this vehicle is not moving. Right? Or you got to change the driver. And that's where a lot of, I'm sure the fleet companies and the logistics companies are taking initiative, but it has not been as pervasive as, which is we want it to be actually. And I think that should happen.
I'm just going to add and just say that, see, look, I think the tech exists in India to kind of monitor everything if you want to, track everything as much as you want to. As a fleet operator, we actually do that for all our cars. To ensure that, not only the drivers are driving safely, they kind of only drive, as you said, up to a certain limit and not stretched, because it does become a real risk, not only for the guests in the car, but also the drivers themselves, and for us as a company, for our brand and reputation. I think to answer your question directly, if we have to minimize the kind of fatalities and accidents that happen on Indian roads, enforcement is one big thing which he put across as compliance. And then kind of, making sure that incentives are aligned within the boundaries of that enforcement of the laws that have been created. Right? Because the drivers are going to drive if they're going to get paid. So you need some sort of checks and balances in place, and then you need to enforce that. But the tech exists, the tools exist. How do you enforce that? How do you get school buses to upgrade, and who pays for that? Who puts in that piece of technology? Those are the questions that we really need to answer.
Okay. Sorry, running out of time completely. He's got a flight to catch as well. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick round with all of you. Of course, the next budget is a few months away. A few months, it's not too far away as well. So if there's one thing you're looking forward to in the next budget, Narayan, what would that be?
I mean, it's the incentives towards electrification are on track. And I would say if companies are building technology out of India, then I think the incentives needs to be agnostic towards segments or levels of technology or price bands that companies are operating at, because we need everybody to build a robust ecosystem.
Reduction in import duties of EVs of all kinds, and definitely reduction in personal income taxes.
Okay. He went for personal income.
Why not?
Automotive giver. No, it impacts.
Okay, let me give the auto angle. If people have more money to spend, they can buy more automotives.
Of course. Puneet.
I think there has to be incentive given to automotive OEMs to have this connected intelligence baked in, because I think that if that comes as a policy or an incentive in the budget, I think the adoption is going to happen much faster. And I think we got to look down few years. It will be really beneficial for all of us actually. So I think if that can happen, nothing like it. Specifically in automotive segment, look, government is doing a lot of stuff in AI and tech and everything. But when it comes specifically automotive, look, roti, kapda, makan, and gadi, right? I mean, that always we have heard, right? So mobility is something which is needed. And as I said earlier, we have like 20 million more vehicles on the ground as compared to houses. And we are increasing, percentage increase is way too higher actually. So that, I think we need to have an angle here specifically from connected intelligence perspective in the automotive and part of the budget also.
Okay. If there's one thing you want in the budget.
Yeah, it's just overall lot lesser taxation just on companies who are genuinely promoting technology, right? Like I think Make in India is a big thing, but making in India is the last step. There's like 10 steps before that where you design, you engineer, you just do so many things before that. I think there should be a different structure for companies which are genuinely pushing that realm for technology in India. Because in the past, like light mobility, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, have been a Japanese segment, have been a European or an American segment. As a country, these vehicles and energy storage and all of these in general, we genuinely have a shot. So the government is generally supporting on the ground for companies that are doing this. I think that will be huge.
Suhas?
2 points. I think we need to incentivize R&D, tax holiday for people who spend a certain portion on R&D. That needs to be emphasized, especially on the angles of EVs and cleaner technologies. The second is, for example, in the factory side of things, state government gives you some allocation of your cost of the human resource. I think R&D has to have that, in my opinion. Government should incentivize, industrial training, R&D training, and give companies rebates on that part, saying that, okay, you push this training, because to be very honest, we might be the greatest people in software, but we have a long way to go in hardware. And I think revolution will not happen just on software, it should happen first on hardware. I think if we can incentivize companies which are investing in hardware and give them more leverage and just not talk about software, I think that will be more important for us to, and general public sentiment will change, and hardware companies will do way better. If you look at Europe, America or Japan, they're built on hardware first and later software. I think we should, look at that very seriously in next budget.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the most important thing what we feel is, at least on the charging piece, as an OEM, they are getting direct subsidy to an OEM, but in the charging piece, all the subsidies generally goes to the oil and gas companies. So we would really like the subsidy on the charging piece should be directly go to the charging OEM. Like us, for example, when we manufacture our own charger, so the subsidy should come directly to the OEM and not to the oil and gas. This is one of the things what we really want in this budget.
Fantastic conversation, and I hope all the ideas that came on the table, and there were many, I enjoyed the conversation. I hope all of you did. Narayan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and I'd like to say we need more forums like this.
Oh, of course.
A lot of interesting thoughts exchanged.
Yeah, get more people who are really doing a great job to get here, debate about things, and bring out new ideas.
Fantastic. I love this format, and I think we'll do it more often. I think from the Republic end, I can tell you that Shitanshu, Puneet, and
Vikas.
Vikas, Paras, and all of you.
This is the government's favorite word. Come on.
And I hope that all of you achieve that in your respective industries. Thank you very much, Vikas. And that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.